there's nothing that I find more frustrating than when people say, well, I said I could do this, but, no, I'm holding you to task on that because that's what you said you're going to do. I have got contracts with customers that say, that's what I'm going to do. They're holding me to task for that. Why shouldn't that trickle down to you?
Welcome to Why Design. I'm Chris Whyte, and this podcast is about the people behind products shaping our world. Every week I sit down with design and engineering leaders who've turned ideas into real-world impact. We break down how they lead, how they learn from failure, and how they build teams that keep moving forward. Because great design isn't just about what looks good, it's about people, culture, and progress. If you care about building better products, leading stronger teams, or rediscovering the purpose behind your work, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Paul, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you on here. I should have asked you this before I click record, actually. Your surname, Paul, perhaps before I get too far and I just call you Paul from Motiv, perhaps you could help me out with the pronunciation of your surname, because I believe it's Greek, is it?
It is. Full name is Paul Kyriakos Metaxatos. But for most people, it's Paul Metaxatos. And for my family that is not Greek, they've had to adjust to that. And so my wife's been called Mrs. M. But most people do make an attempt at Metaxatos. And they see the X, it throws them off. But once they get through it once, they're usually help-free.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I am the first-generation American. My parents came from Greece and Cyprus.
Amazing. Well, there you go. Much better than the intro I had scripted, so thank you for that. But Paul, you're the principal and owner, or one of the owners at Motiv Design in Boston.
Yeah.
You built a consultancy that major brands trust for physical product and packaging, often in long-term relationships rather than one-off projects. But before we get into that, I want to take us back to a moment where everything shifted. So when did you stop thinking like an industrial designer, Paul, and start thinking like an owner, whether you liked it or not?
It's a really great question. And I would say for me, I always had it in me to be an entrepreneur. When I was really young, I had the benefit of being around a few people who were entrepreneurial, and I saw how they thought and how they operated. And it really intrigued me. It made an impression. I got a couple of great friends whose families had enjoyed, a certain lifestyle, and had also enjoyed a certain mindset, which seemed really interesting. And just at an early age, I thought, wow, I want to do that at some point. And then when I embarked on my career, I always I've never worked for a large corporation, so I always worked in these small firms like our own today that were similar in scale, where you could see the entire sausage making. So from what I did, when I first joined as a junior designer, to the partners. And in fact, as an interesting thread throughout my career, I've actually either worked for partners or become a partner, right? So two owners, meaning 50-50 owners. That's really been a thread throughout my entire career, with the exception of the first guy that I worked for in college, who was just a single owner, really unique, exciting, and interesting, eccentric guy. And that was my first exposure to working in a design studio in Manhattan's West Village. Yeah. And but what really got me interested was, one, following that thread. So jumping into these businesses, working with the principals and founders, even as a junior. And I accelerated pretty quickly in my career. I was very, very blessed with skills and talent that I could understand the craft. I was also blessed with working with some fantastic people early in my career, just super, super talented people. There's a list of them that were just great mentors, and they saw that I had an interest, I was engaged, this is what I really wanted to do. And so, working with them, working closely with the principals, and that meant actually going early on calls with customers and sort of seeing the whole operation, but really focusing on what I did. And I would say that, and I saw a huge benefit, in fact, in working in these operations and learning the ropes, learning all aspects from doing the design, doing the development, working on working with different teams, engineers, marketers, really just enjoying that, not really overthinking kind of my future, although it was always in the back of my head. But the entrepreneurial thing was there, and I'd say probably midway through my last working opportunity for somebody else, I was really chomping at the bit. And so it was an interesting situation because, in life things happen for a reason, and that business, the founder had driven it to failure. And, while we were in that mode, it was a extraordinarily valuable lesson in the things you should do and shouldn't do. So it was sort of the pre-training, and I had already wanted to be entrepreneurial and getting there, and then the moment presented itself. So it was an unusual sequence of events that came to that conclusion, and I was very fortunate also to have my best friend and current business partner by my side in the trenches in that
Mm.
situation. And we both looked at each other and said, well, we both have young kids. We either go for the home run now or not and regret it. So here's the opportunity. Let's do it.
Amazing. And that was 15 years ago, pretty much to the day, isn't it? December
That's
2010,
that's
that
exactly
finished.
right. This was the
Yeah.
fall of 2010 when that
Yeah.
company imploded, and essentially Rome was just falling apart around us. And
Wow.
so it was a very stressful, interesting, and exciting time. And then January 2011, Motive was born.
Real. And from that time, what lessons have you kind of brought forward? Because I bet you either learn from making mistakes yourself or learn from other people's mistakes, and you've got a great opportunity there to bounce into what Motive became. But think about what are the key ones that still kind
Yeah.
of ring true today.
Well, you're absolutely right. So that experience beforehand was fantastic. And again, my training in terms of working for very closely with owners over the years really taught me a tremendous amount. And so there was the basic mechanics of the business. I mean, the business breaks into a couple of categories, right? There's the mechanics of running a consulting business,
Mm.
cash flow, all that kind of stuff. There's the support structure of, your accountant, your lawyer, and those kinds of things. And then there's sort of the intangible of like the sort of the passion behind it. And that's sort of an evolving thing. That's, I think the other two aspects have really stayed pretty consistent, and there are certain guidelines you can follow. And again, fortunate to have the experience, seeing what works and what doesn't. The intangible is really the fluidness of the changes in the business climates as you move forward. There's little doubt the number one thing is the relationship, and if you've been in an industry for a long time, you do have the benefit of actually creating more relationships than you may have thought you had.
Mm.
And that is currency, So I was very, very blessed to, again, since the beginning of my career, consult and become and be forward, in terms of interacting with customers. And so this gave me a lot of confidence in terms of really expanding those relationships, growing them.
Mm.
And in fact, in my prior role before launching Motive, I had been very forward. I was really running design and then really moving towards running significant accounts. In fact, one of my favorites was Keurig. Keurig was an
Mm.
account where I just really saw eye to eye with what I to this day still think is one of the most remarkable CEOs. And it was very formative for me and for him. I mean, like that guy, wrote the script for one of the most sensational appliance and food businesses, of recent times. And I was just very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time and have the right mindset to align.
Mm.
And so that was very meaningful and productive at the same time, both from a education and a fulfillment to a productivity perspective.
Yeah, huge. And at Proteus, were you were you exposed to the inner workings of the consultancy, the finance, the legal side, as you mentioned, the bits that often in a consulting firm, my industry included, it's like you get to principal, you get to director level, but you're not showing how the business
That's
actually
right.
works. You're not showing how much money it costs to run, and
Yeah.
what cash flow is.
That part was definitely eye opening. So I thought I saw some things, and again, we were working with an owner. I had been fortunate for most of my career to work with fantastic folks with high levels of integrity,
Mm.
and the last guy maybe not so much. And so there was a certain opacity to what actually was going on there. So that was a little bit of a wake up. For one, the clothes came off, at the when the company had collapsed, and so then it
Hmm.
became very apparent what the situation was, and certainly we very quickly ramped up on all those details to understand what we were dealing with in order to make the decisions that we made in order to start our business. Again, very valuable. And then that was just a great ramp up to how we ran and managed our business. I have
Hmm.
always been, and my partner as well. We're pragmatists at heart. We are unique personalities in that we can complement each other, but at heart we're reasonably conservative pragmatists,
Hmm.
and that has been massive. We you certainly take a risk, a massive risk being an entrepreneur. There's little doubt about it, right? And you also take a lot of responsibilities when you not only are entrepreneurial, but the business supports other people.
Mm.
So you really do need to take those things seriously and really learn to manage with a level hand. And that's been fortunate that the personalities going into it, had the right mindset. Again, partnerships are its own. We could do a
Mm.
podcast on partnerships, right? I mean, the do's and don'ts, and it's an interesting thing. It's like any other relationship. If you choose wisely and you communicate often, you will be productive. And there's always going to be interactions that may spark some challenges, and it's how you manage them that really sort of moves things forward. And so I think all of those aspects together have made have sort of grown on each other over the years, and we've managed to reflect
Mm.
quickly and understand, and then move on to the next thing. And then I think really the most important part is really being in a mode. It's like a boxer being in a ring, right? You're in the ring, so stuff's going to happen. You could get hit, but you're always in that right pose. You're in that right position. It's not like you're angry. This is just business, and you should just expect things to always be fluid and stuff to happen, and just maintain the idea that I'm in the ring. This is what I'm going to be doing, and I'm not stepping out of the ring unless something really massive happens. But that's my job, to be in the ring.
I love that analogy. It's
I've never been a boxer. I've never been in a ring, but
no.
that's the analogy of the day.
Yeah, but I think everyone can resonate with that, can't they? So that's amazing. Thank you for running through that. So let's wrap back to the title of the podcast, which is Why Design, and it's the key question I like to ask people at this stage. Um, what was the emotional driver? Why design? Why
Yeah,
industrial design all those
yeah.
years ago?
Well, I mentioned at the beginning of this that my parents are immigrants, and my
Yeah.
mother moved from Cyprus, the warm, friendly island of Cyprus, to London, where you are,
Yeah.
and she embarked at 18 on her goal of becoming a fashion designer. And there she was in this chilly climate, and she went for her dream, and she landed her dream. So she
Amazing.
she started working in the fashion design space, and it went really well for her. And then she went from London to New York, and so continuing in that same field. So my mother again was a fashion designer, fashion illustrator, very gifted hand, very visionary. She met my father in New York City, who was a recent immigrant coming from Greece, couldn't
Mm.
speak any English. He's trained as an engineer. And
Mm.
maybe a lot of background here, but my father's very practical. He's an electrical engineer, so he really
Hmm.
was very inclined to understanding nuances that you couldn't even see. But then he was also very, very well mechanically inclined as well. I mean, he
Mm.
was a problem solver if there was one. So I like to think that my upbringing was really the merger of those two aspects. Really, the creative vision, and then the practical aspects of engineering. And I'm not an engineer. I initially studied engineering because my father wouldn't hear it
Mm.
any other way, but quickly showed him that that's not my gift. I have another gift, and that is design. And so, to answer
Mm.
the question of why design, I think there's an aspect that's genetic, and then that may also be just the influences of my childhood, watching my mother sketch, following my father around fixing things, and really developing a deep appreciation of things, to the point that when I was in In high school, I started making things. I was a
Mm.
maker. I was an avid maker. Go tinker, make stuff, and I just love the idea of realizing things quickly. And that really got me hooked. And so then when I started studying, as I said, I started engineering, and I said, you know what, this is a little too much into the calculations for me. I need to
Mm.
really realize it directly. And I had learned about Ital Design and Giugiaro, which is one of my favorite. I mean, if there's a conversation with a designer in the past that I'd love to have, it would be sitting down with Giugiaro at this point and really talking about design, because that guy really influenced me. Seeing what he did, the
Mm.
cars he styled, and then moving into founding Ital Design, a very successful product development consultancy. That sort of framed up my vision.
Mm.
And I'm proud to say that I've been able to kind of move through the space and kind of start with a career where I've been fortunate to work on some really really exciting and successful products, and then found a business that continues that, and not only that, today really um, teaches people getting into the field. I couldn't be any more proud of this right now. The quality of the interns that we have, and the students, the high school students that I've been
Mm.
tutoring recently, that hey, there's this exciting career out there and you can be part of it. And let me show you the ropes.
That's awesome. And what you think back to the kind of the 35 years or so you've been in the industry?
At least.
What, yeah, what's a belief about design that you've carried with you that still holds up today?
Yeah. There's always ways to solve. There's always solutions that are out there, big and small. And it's a conversation. And, like the beauty of consultant design, and I just frame that up in itself, is that it's something where you drop in on something quickly, you understand it, you go through a pretty rigorous process. This is not random,
Mm.
meaning understanding the user, understanding the consumer, understanding the marketing issues, understanding the market.
Mm-hmm.
But each and every time, it's still fresh and interesting, and that's what keeps me engaged. And the things I've heard from our team over the years is that even though in many ways they are doing the same thing, the problems are always unique and different. And you couple that with sort of the change of the time, right? I mean, what's
Mm.
trending, what people are doing. I mean, we're all, especially if you design product for the consumer market, which is most of our business, is retail, consumer oriented products and packages. It's such a fluid space. Consumers are so fickle, and so it always
Mm.
makes the challenges unique and interesting. And that's really another part of the draw, is that it always stays fresh from that perspective. It can be hair pulling out type of you know interactions to try to solve these things, and that's certainly one of the challenges we face. Is you're always working through business and working through opportunities and looking for more, but that's the job.
What have been some of the the challenges where you've lost more hair in those kind of
Mine's firmly
situations?
attached, but it's very white at this
you,
point.
you're doing well, yeah. It's yeah. You've got plenty of hair. You've obviously gone silver fox, but yeah, still. I think I'd rather go silver than bald. So
I'll
I'll be
take what
joining
I'll
you in a
take
few
what I've been
years.
given. I'll take what I've been
Yeah,
given.
absolutely. Yeah, but think about some of the more frustrating challenges. Do they come more from the client side, like expectations? Perhaps you can give us some kind of
Sure.
anecdotes around that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be happy to, and I'd be breaking it into two lanes. I mean, like again, there's design, and then there's consultant design, right? So,
Yeah.
and so a big part of that is really managing those relationships. And I learned early on from some really great, wonderful people how to engage and hone that skill over the years. And it certainly was not without some pretty significant breakdowns, but that's how you
Mm.
learn. You because there's expectations that are set, and you realize that the designer really sees things. That those that have the gift and the ability really see it early on. You have a conversation, it's
Mhm.
like, I just visualized that. Yeah, the challenge is not everybody else in the room is seeing the same thing, right? And so the opportunity is really to bring everyone along in a way. And over the years, those approaches have changed. Whether or not it was early sketching and post-its, or quick CAD modeling, or AI
Mm.
generated renditions today, of a nugget of an idea. I mean, that the job is really to bring people along, and the breakdowns happen when there's a miscommunication, and those miscommunications can happen in terms of people's expectations. And so managing expectations along the way in consultant design is absolutely critical, meaning even from the initial engagement, understanding what that expectation is.
Mm.
Where do you want this to go? The question is always asked then, well, what does it cost? And that's a very difficult question to answer sometimes when you're building something where you don't know what it is, right? So inevitably, those are also challenges as well. Managing
Mm.
the financial expectations, managing the investment. So it's really multifaceted. I would say the design part of it, meaning the look, the feel, in many ways tends to be the more sort of easily fulfilling aspect versus the
Hmm.
mechanics of moving a relationship along and really sort of building something. And that's where there are a lot of
Mm.
challenges. But those are also opportunities where you can engage with people. And, where relationships have not come along is where really there are glaring differences in really core values. And I can say that with great confidence at this point, that you can only go so far in a relationship where the values are just they're far apart.
Hmm.
Fortunately, most relationships that we embark upon are self-correcting, in the sense that life is like that, where you engage with people and then I mean, I consider many of my customers really great and dear friends. I mean, we both enjoy what we do. You might as well
Mm.
enjoy the people you work with. And I believe that sort of just happens in a manner over time if you are proactive, engaging in the conversation. And so I think that's one of the big people are the biggest challenge, and then people are really the biggest opportunity.
I totally hear that. Obviously, in my line of work, how we go about things isn't too dissimilar. The output,
Yeah.
strikingly different, but it's about curiosity. It's about working together to achieve kind of the goal, the output that the client's looking to achieve. But quite often, they don't know what they've got an idea that's a bit
Right.
fuzzy, but you need to tease out of them. You need to ask questions. You need to work with them to define. Why do you want this thing?
That's right.
And if it's successful, why is it
That's
successful?
right.
So when you talk about junior designers and grads and
Yep.
interns coming in, how much of that the curiosity, the consulting kind of traits, the kind of going on the talking a client through a journey, to tease out those actual briefs, how much of that do they come pre-armed with, and how much is that something you end up having to teach them, or is that an innate
Yeah,
kind of
I
skill?
strongly feel that it's taught. That's something
Yeah.
you engage in. I just think about my own career, and that's just something we touched on, materials and process and creativity and drawing and CAD and all that kind of
Mm.
stuff. But the soft skills of engaging with people, especially in a consultative manner, I don't. Maybe it's changed today. I mean, I haven't been in school in a long time, but what I see from students today is really no different, except, I mean, the skills they have are fantastic. I mean, their technology
Hmm.
skills are amazing. I think, if you think of what we've been through with COVID and you think of some of the changes in terms of how people communicate, there probably are some challenges there in terms of that sort of level of interaction.
Hmm.
Um, and that's kind of what it entails, right? I mean, being a really sort of strong and the consultative side is really being able to sit down with people and open conversations and kind of move people through. So the positive is, though, I see interest. I see when people come and join us, they're like, wow, I'd love to listen in. I'd love to be part of that meeting. I'd love to experience that. And that's what we try to do. And I will share with you one of the things that brought us more back into the space post COVID was me thinking to myself as a younger me, going, boy, if I was just coming on now, what would I do? And if I didn't have the opportunity to really go into an exciting and interesting environment, I think my career would be very different. And I thought so hard about that I shared with our team. I said, guys, we really need, like we want to have interns. They can't be in their bedrooms. They got to be here with us.
Mm,
This is a hands-on kind of business. It's not every waking hour of the day. We've learned a lot from that experience, but it really makes a huge difference to sort of have those water cooler conversations that people like to talk about
huge.
and
Yeah.
just be in the space. There's so much early on in the career that's absorbed through just environment.
Yeah. There's nothing. There's so much you learn that isn't on a SOP or a kind
That's
of
right.
an instruction manual. It's just osmosis. Oh, I love that. When you're interviewing, I guess designers or engineers
Sure.
at any level, really, are there any telltale signs or things that you can pick up on that will give you a clue as to this person's got it? When it comes to that curiosity, when it comes
Yeah.
to that kind of that ability to absorb and eventually consult. Are there any things you're looking out
Yeah,
for?
it's a great question, and I think that one's a little bit more challenging with the nuance of consult, right? So
Mm,
there's the skills of coming in and doing design, the nuance of really somebody who's just, they and some may not know they've been in the space, right? And then you open that option up, because
mm,
there's the job of doing the design work and working with the team, and and in many organizations, obviously, you have more senior leadership that are handling the relationships and the conversations. As you push it down, then you can see if somebody's interested and
mm,
capable, and it's fine if they are, and it's fine if they aren't. I mean, our environment is full of people who some like to be forward and some like to be back. That doesn't change their value in terms of the total operation. That being said, in a consultant operation, you do need people who are more forward. You can
mm.
have several that are, like, hey, you're amazing at what you do, and you can be in the room and you can be quiet and you can absorb and say three words that are super meaningful. That's great. Or you can be like me, who can't bear the silence, and needs to
Yeah.
articulate it, and at times should probably be quieter. But I always feel like it is somebody's job to manage a conversation, especially in a business environment, to move it along. And early on, I learned that, like, people can look around the room, but there's a lot of confidence that's given, when somebody really takes the lead. And leadership is something where people give it if it's offered up, and if it's done in a manner that's productive.
Yeah, massively. I mean, there's a bit of a sales superpower as well, isn't it? But knowing when to offer silence.
Yeah,
When the question you ask followed immediately by silence and letting that vacuum pull the other person in,
that's right.
because you're not alone feeling awkward with silence. It's I think it's a natural human trait. But what problem were you and Bill determined to solve that you couldn't solve inside someone else's company? If you're serious about growing in design or engineering, you should join the Why Design community on Discord. It's where product leaders share real lessons, job opportunities, and behind the scenes insights you won't find anywhere else. And if you want more stories and strategies from the world of product development, subscribe to the Why Design newsletter. Both links are in the show notes, so go check them out.
That's right. Well, it's multifaceted in the sense that our situation was kind of unique because our business,
Yeah.
the business that we managed, that we didn't own, failed. So there was no going back, right? So that was over. And we certainly enjoyed working with each other. We enjoyed what we do. We enjoyed our customers, and in many ways, there was a bit of an anger because we had done everything right and the business failed, right? I mean, because it wasn't based on our leadership, and that is something that we said, I really would like to avoid that going forward. I'm willing to bet on myself that I could do this well and do this right. And so that was really part of that charge, like, yeah, could we go inside? And I did
Mhm.
entertain some other opportunities to go join some other people, but there was this thing in the back of my head that said, that could happen again. Like, this could be out of my
Mhm.
hands. I am a bit type A, if you haven't noticed already. And so I do like to have, my sense of control of things in a manner that I
Mhm.
feel I can operate. And as risky as it is, sort of knowing, and then learning, there's one thing to talk about it, there's another thing to be in the position, and they are very different things. I mean, that gap between, looking up and saying, drive the bus harder, and being the bus driver. It's a very different situation, right? And so I think the situation that we were presented with was unique, and beneficial, and so we kind of knew we were getting into it, but did we really know the entire picture? No,
Mm.
because I mean, obviously, there's a lot more that goes into doing it again and again and again. The interesting thing about consulting design, especially in the space of when you're really doing unique different things, and we've got plenty of long-term customer relationships, right? 10, 15 years, but they do go through a natural curve. That's just the way business
Mm.
works. And the goal is you have these curves that overlap each other, so that you can maintain a productive business. And that those are the challenges you face. So, the initial challenge was, well, what are we doing? And we were very blessed in that the relationships that we had forged were our relationships, meaning that the guy who we were working
So the
with
customers came
really
with you.
had. I'm sorry.
So your customers came with you when the
That's
last
right.
business
That's
failed.
exactly right. And
Right.
that's critically important. And it wasn't like we were
Yeah.
taking them. The business had evaporated, So we were true to our integrity and our mindsets, of
Yeah.
which we still, Bill and I hold those things Bill's my partner, very highly,
Mm.
those are very highly valued aspects today, about just doing the
Yeah.
best you can. That that
Yeah.
was
So, I
that
mean,
was part and parcel.
it's the upside of a terrible situation where you've got to be looking at other employment or starting your own
That's
thing.
right.
You could be doom and gloom, but actually, silver lining.
That's it.
You've got no restrictive covenants,
None. That's
and
exactly right.
you've clearly done a good job for the clients who want to come with you.
And
So
just as a quick sidebar, that is
yeah,
what we were dealing with prior to this. As I
yeah,
mentioned to you, I was really chomping at the bit. I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of ready to do something different, but
yeah,
I had my hands tied. And it was a
yeah,
really kind of a miserable situation for a period of time, between having my hands tied and knowing that something was not quite right.
yeah. And then with your patience, I guess it all paid off in
Patience.
the end, anyways.
Patience.
Yeah. So it leads me on to the next question. Motive's growth has largely been through referral and
Correct.
inbound. Aside from obviously maintain those excellent relationships, was there anything that you did early on that made people recommend you?
I mean, it's the things that people typically hold true. Build, good relationships, solid ethics.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be forward. You have to be out there. There's just really no substitute for that. So, you visit clients, and obviously pre-COVID there was a lot more of that. Post-COVID things have become a bit more
Mm-hmm.
efficient in terms of how we operate. But, be a presence. The things I learned in my career working for others, which again, very fortunate to work for a number of people, and again, both those have been positive and negative influences, was really getting out there and interacting with customers, going to trade shows, just being really out there, and learning how to engage with people and sort of read, what their needs are. And so that really built a bit of an inventory, and then you just continue to recharge it. Unfortunately, our business is a very long sales cycle, so you do the seeds you plant early on, you will reap later in life. And these businesses, early on, they're quite fragile if you don't have a bit of a legacy. We were very fortunate to have 10 years of the prior business as a legacy, essentially, and we're able to really build on that, and then sort of additionally, plant new seeds, and really sort of work hard to nurture those relationships, and
Mm.
more importantly, nurture not the businesses themselves, but the people as they then move to other things. And in our space, marketers move with probably much higher frequency than technical people, and
Yeah.
really following them and offering to support, as we always do. Like, hey, where are you at now? How can I help? Even just a chat when somebody's had a change in their life, really, really matters.
Mm.
And I think those are the moments that are important, where you just build a rapport. And at the end of the day, your mission is to make people successful, as a consultant, and also as a creative, using your superpower to make that happen.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, I speak to a lot of kind of young consultancies, startup consultancies, and those that have been going for a number of years, and they can often find themselves in that loop of working with, inventors and startups, and it's
Very
small,
difficult.
very difficult. It's very, they're short projects. They might come on quickly, but it's very, very difficult to maintain a pipeline and cash flow. But you're always busy. So actually committing time and investing time into networking and building those relationships, it's difficult for them to justify
Yeah,
because they're so busy. But I'm a true believer in the compound interest effect of relationship building.
that's right.
The time you invest meeting people, especially post COVID, there's so many
Especially.
people. It's like, I appreciate we are talking on a video call here, but we have met in person as well, and that the impact that little gesture has is
Huge.
huge today. And
Huge.
so
You coming
yeah,
into my studio and sitting down together, massive, massive.
it's awesome. Yeah, you get such more so much more insight into what that person's about, what the business is about,
Yeah,
whether it's going on site, which meeting a kind of a post CS mixer, or a hardware event, or whatever it might be. It's people.
it is.
You're solving people's problems, so go out and see them.
Yeah, build a relationship up or down, depending on where
Yeah,
somebody's at in their career. And, and again, the more you've been in it, the more that you see the value there. And that definitely has a massive ripple effect on the
huge.
team, and I do my best really to try to, and that, again, not everybody's got different skills within an organization.
Mm,
I certainly do my best to share the best that I can about how to manage that. And I think there is a certain approach that we've used within our organization that's worked well.
yeah,
That being
awesome.
said, you are still living in a replacement business. Make no mistake. And I think like you cannot rest on your laurels. That this business
Mm,
is one where piece of wood comes in the front door and goes out the back door as dust, and you need to go find another piece of wood. So
yeah,
if you're going to run an organization like this, it's not passive.
absolutely not. No, but I do think if you're not going to any networking events, or you're not going to seeing any customers, anything is an infinite improvement, isn't it, from
That's right.
where you are at the minute? So, interesting question for you now, Paul. What's the most important no you've ever said as a business owner?
Hmm. Uh, wow. Well, I think for us, it was probably, if I step back and think as a business owner,
Yeah.
like it was probably taking on debt.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we run a debt-free cash flow business, and
Mm.
you have to think about how you sleep at night. And everybody's different. Everybody's risk profile is different. I think being an entrepreneur, you got to think you're taking risk being an entrepreneur. Then
Mm.
there's various qualities of that. And the guy that we worked with prior to Motive loved to take on a lot of debt. He enjoyed running a business off somebody else's money, and he did a very good job of it for a period of time. But then you realize quickly when things turn, if you're
Mm.
leveraged, you have challenges. And so it's not the sunny day stuff, it's the rainy day stuff. You really need to think very hard about it. And if you're heavily leveraged, you don't have control.
Mm.
And so I would say that was really one of the, because it's always offered. I mean, money,
Oh yeah.
especially if you go back a number of years, money's harder to come by right now for sure. But if you go back 15 years when we founded this business, people were throwing money. They're like, sure, I want to be part of that. Take on some money, like, oh, there's a couple of strings here and there, and then soon you're a puppet.
Yeah.
And that's something that,
Yeah.
and there's probably there could be other paths to growth with leverage, but you
Mm.
just got to pick what suits you. And this is what suited my partner and I to really manage our business, manage our finances, and
Mm.
run something that we can feel comfortable with. Because again, you really don't know. It's extraordinarily hard to project in our business. You have a guess and you have optimism, but
Mm.
that's kind of thin, and so you have to really take out some other risk aspects.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And looking at the dates here of when Proteus ended, I reading between the lines here, heavily debted up until the financial
That's
crash,
right.
and then it's just
I
spiraling,
whacked the
isn't it?
knees
So
out of it in
yeah,
2007, 2008, and then it was
yeah,
just hobbled, and then ran on fumes for a little while longer, which is a testament to how long a business can go, like in a broken state.
yeah.
But it's not fun.
No, not at all. But yeah, give, being debt free, yeah, it's not to be sniffed at. It's and having that long kind of sustained growth as opposed to debt fueled or
That's
investment
right.
fueled kind of
And
steep
it's
growth.
also a personal thing. It's the way that we look at this business, it is a personal business, like it's a private
Yeah.
business. And so, we choose to run it, and both of us just in the manner that we run our own households, that
Mm.
we're not necessarily extravagant people, and we're stay humble and stay hungry.
Yeah, and it's there's a lot to be said, and actually I'm seeing a lot of smaller consultancies doing particularly well now with having a really strong core founder-led team where you can deliver an excellent service to your clients. Much better than the larger agencies might be able to, especially a lot more personal. Anyway,
That's
and then
right.
as you take on the bigger projects, you've got a big network of freelancers. You can augment that team to scale kind of for short term if
That's
you need
right.
to, without taking on too much risk, like you say. But
You take on a ton of overhead, and it's inevitable that
yeah,
it has to be financed in a way that can allow it to continue to operate.
yeah, wonderful. So let's talk about Motive. Obviously, we talked about Motive quite a bit, but I wanted you to kind of give us like the rundown for people kind of tuning in now
Yeah.
or that have never heard of Motive before. We've been talking about it and around it, but who is Motive?
Yeah.
What does it stand for? You know, um, the elevator pitch, I suppose, Paul.
Sure. Motive is a creative agency based in South Boston. Our core channels are brand packaging and product development. As I mentioned earlier, we take great pride in working closely with our customers focused on retail and consumer challenges, opportunities. That being said, we also solve lots of other unique and interesting problems. We work with many large organizations. We've also worked with early stage. Our book of business is like a well diversified portfolio at most times, where we have
Mm-hmm.
large cap and early stage, and really you orient it, and some of it is by selection. Some of it is, fortuitous in terms of the relationships
Mm-hmm.
that we have. But that's what fuels it. The team is made up of graphic designers, mechanical engineers, and industrial designers. Through and through, it is a creative team. That's the DNA of the organization. They're creatives that have had long tenures with us. They've had
Mm-hmm.
great backgrounds, unique, different backgrounds. We take great pride in some of the people that we've nurtured from the ground up, from college, and others that have come from amazing and unique, exciting challenges that have wanted to join and be part of our team. We run a pretty broad bandwidth in terms of ages and experience. And it's a living thing, where people do come in and out, and that's just the nature of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And we also take great pride in people that, again, we've nurtured and have had the pleasure of working with, that have moved on to great, unique, interesting, different things. Year 15, learned a ton about this business and this industry specifically, and really looking forward to continuing to do what we do in the way that we do it, and really nurturing our team so that our team can take on that challenge and continue this. So
Mm-hmm.
that if anything is, and I'll speak for my partner, that is really our legacy. That we can develop Motive as a brand, which is challenging for sure. I mean, you're in the service industry, one that stands for a level of creativity and pragmatism and execution and the delivery of really great experiences for customers.
Awesome. If we surveyed, your client base tomorrow, and we asked them to describe Motiv using one word, what words do you think would come up most frequently?
Yeah. I think many would say that our team is driven and motivated, probably motivated. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a little bit of tongue in cheek there, but we really like to instill that. The phone rings, answer it. Customer asks for something, give it to them.
Yeah.
So it's a level of motivation based on an understanding of the principles of great relationship giving. Deliver the best quality, deliver the best interaction, enjoy the process. This is life. You don't get to do it again. So really, that it's multifaceted that way. But enjoy the relationships, enjoy the time you spend together, have some fun, be productive. But yeah, I'd say motivated is probably the key term.
And is that where the name originates from as well? Or is there a story behind that?
Yeah, I wish I had a better origin story. We were actually in a tight spot. Once we figured this thing was going to work, we did a quick naming study internally and came up with a bunch of interesting ones. And Motiv sort of came to the top when we took the E off of it, and there it was. But time was not our friend. Time was a helpful deciding factor, in addition to what was available. So make no mistake, you can have all kinds of great ideas, and then you go and try to trademark them and try to own it in your trade of business, and it may not be available. So we were very fortunate to then distill it down to a few good ones, and then be able to take Motiv in our trade, in our class of for trademarking.
Yeah, I know that all too well.
Yeah.
Roughly a year ago, I had a message from a podcast host of a very similar named podcast in French, targeting a slightly different audience, but he took umbrage with the fact my design journeys was stealing his audience. So,
oh boy.
So that prompted a rebrand, and so here we are.
Funny you should mention that. Early on, after we started up, I did get a call from somebody, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're also Motiv." I was like, "Huh." Now it turned out they were at a different, they were in a, I'd say it's the same playground, but not the same sandbox. So it did not turn into an issue, and they don't exist anymore. There are other Motivs out there, but we're the Boston Motiv.
Well, that's it. It's at the time, I had a choice between fighting it, and I fought it with a few emails, but then Spotify and Apple got involved, and whilst I had a case, because he didn't own the trademark, I thought I could just put these calories into something more productive.
There you go.
And actually, the positive is that, Why Design came out of that. I consulted with my kind of network, my advisors, people who've been on the podcast, and actually now it's now a community. It's more than just a podcast. It's like bringing people together.
I think you've built something amazing. I will touch on one other point there that you just made. I love, and that is negotiate. Standing on your principles is great, but to a fault. And one of another core foundational thing over the years is that when you're confronting, we've had situations, all different kinds of unique and interesting things over the years, and just very quickly learn, educate, negotiate, and make the best. Don't get angry. Don't get upset. And this is the same thing I teach my kids right now, who are teenagers, and sort of jumping into that next stage in their lives is like, it's easy to get angry. It's really harder to step back and really take stock and just be the bigger person and figure something out. And so to your point, change the name, move on. It's in the rearview mirror. Don't end up in a bar fight when it's not necessary.
Yeah, it was. In hindsight, probably the best thing that could have happened for the podcast is.
Otherwise, there are multiple losers.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. We both win in this scenario.
That's right.
It didn't feel like that in the moment. It took me 24 hours to step back and reflect and go, let's just grow up and
Yeah.
just move on.
Sage words anytime in your career, and again, if you can use the benefit of that experience, and then you can take stock. Let me think about those times where I went so far and then realized, okay, you know what, this is just a losing proposition, and
Yeah,
let's not go there. You
absolutely.
spend money on attorneys, you waste time, you waste calories at your point. Not worth it.
Yeah, I've had a few moments because we've got a very new team, being a startup ourselves.
Sure.
Where people make mistakes, they're learning.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty zen about these things. I interviewed Will, the CEO of Brompton Bikes, a few weeks ago, and he says no one died. These things like mistakes. So long as we're not making mistakes that lead to someone dying or seriously hurting themselves, then who cares?
I might
It's a
borrow
flash
that
in the
one. No
pan.
one died.
Yeah, no one
So
died.
let's.
So yeah, it's disappointing, but no one died. So let's learn from it and let's move forward.
Yeah, and move forward.
Yeah.
Very quickly assess, have the conversation. We always follow up, and we win and lose every day, right? In terms of
Yeah.
pitches, and ask the question, and I always thank any customer who would re-engage. They've not hired us, but they're willing. They know the effort that we spent, and we spend a lot of effort on pitches, and
Yeah.
and they say, you know what? Let me just tell you everything that happened. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
We're now friends. I mean, like, maybe next time, or maybe we'll cross roads and have a coffee at some point, but just give me I put the effort into it. You asked the question. This is not brutally transactional. There's a relationship here somewhere. And that, I bristle at that a bit, that because there is a bit of that in our industry, which is purely transactional. Procurement is going to get their pound of flesh. I love procurement people, and I want to make them happy, but at the same time, you got to build a relationship to really make for a functional interaction that's long term, that where both parties win.
Yeah.
So again,
Huge.
slight side rant.
But no, it's still very relevant to the whole discussion. So, going back to my kind of question line though, if someone joined Motiv tomorrow, what would surprise them about your standards or your process? I'm guessing if they listen to this, probably not a lot, but assuming they haven't, what would surprise them?
Well,
I wanted to pause a moment to talk about Kodu, the specialist recruitment partner for physical product teams. When founders outgrow their early team and need engineers who can scale hardware, that's where we step in. When design consultancies win more projects than their teams can handle, we help them find senior designers who deliver without losing creative quality. And when established brands push into new hardware categories, we bring in leaders who've built category-defining products before. If you're hiring or planning your next move in product design or engineering, head over to teamkodu.com or connect with me, Chris Whyte, on LinkedIn.
I mean, standards are high and processes defined, but not necessarily chiseled in concrete. So, it is a bit of a living process with the team, a very well-oiled team that I'm extremely proud of. That we've gravitated towards each other, we've worked together, we've collaborated, but we're certainly very, very open. I think if you ask anybody, they'll say that, boy, that team at Motiv is very welcoming, and they're going to do their best to make somebody successful. But it's not easy, and this is not a pushover, and nobody is not under the microscope is a strong word, but everybody just needs to pull their own weight. We're a small business, and the expectations are high that you will be productive in the capacity that you've committed to. And I take commitments very, very seriously. I take the commitments we make to our customers seriously. So I take the commitments that we have to our employees very seriously, and they should take those commitments seriously as well. There's nothing that I find more frustrating than when people say, well, I said I could do this, but no, I'm holding you to task on that because that's what you said you're going to do. I have got contracts with customers that say that's what I'm going to do. They're holding me to task for that. Why shouldn't that trickle down to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's some people will really resonate with that because it's the ownership, it's the autonomy. Some people will be like, actually, no, I want a cushion. I want to be protected,
Maybe our
and
kind of
it's
business
not
is not for you. Like if you want
exactly.
to
Yeah.
be in an environment where people are enthusiastic about what they do, the work is diverse. There's the thrill of the kill. There's the agony of defeat. It's shared. It's we've it's an alive environment.
Yeah, awesome. Touching on the agony of the defeat, not wanting to take it down a negative point, but what's what's the hardest thing about running a consultancy that spans brand, product, packaging, and engineering?
Yeah.
Where do things typically break?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's that's a multifaceted question because
Yeah.
by design, we offer a bit of a broader range of services for a small firm, and you
Mm.
mentioned it earlier as well. We're blessed to have a great core team of 20 people. We're blessed to have an amazing network that's much larger than that helps us punch above our
Hmm.
weight. Um, but there are challenges that you face as a small team in terms of um, you know constantly uh, you know I guess going head to head with larger firms, larger agencies,
Mm.
and that where you really need to sort of dig deep. And if you don't hit the mark, then you need to retrench quickly. And we as a team tend to pivot. Once we hit something and we hit an
Hmm.
impasse, we're like, we'll retrench quickly. That at its key, it's people. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, I can't
Yeah.
parse it any other way. It's really the level and the quality of communication you have with your people internally, and
Mm.
having difficult conversations. That's just part and parcel to it in order to improve things.
Yeah. And in terms of the people side of things, and you mentioned obviously the bigger competition, what's your approach to keeping your team sharp and relevant as the market shifts, whether that be
Yeah.
technology, whether it be, the market's flooded with freelancers kind of taking on some of the smaller projects, or the bigger agencies that are maybe undercutting because the
Sure.
economy's tight. But yeah, how are you
We,
keeping the
we,
team
we try
sharp?
to communicate as much as possible, sort of the wins. I mean, it's again, we're not a huge company, but again, there are separate discussions that are happening, and
Mm.
the business side of it is very, very difficult. The climate has become more difficult in the last number of years. We are the tip of the spear in terms of
Yeah.
development dollars. When dollars dry up, development dries up. And so I mean, I feel strongly about just being as open and honest with the team as possible in the most positive manner. I'm generally a very optimistic guy. Otherwise I would not do this. um, but sharing with people like, hey, here's the benefit. Like, we met somebody new, and yeah, we didn't get
Yeah.
this one, we'll get the next one. But I don't take those losses easily. We want to win. Make no mistake. We're driven to win, driven to succeed, but also very realistic that we may not get every one of them. And along the way, we want to make friends and we want to move things along. But
Hmm.
it's a hard goal to the win, because you got to make this business work. It's a monthly kind of thing. It's a cash flow business, so it does matter. If you don't find one, you got to find another. But by the
Hmm.
same token, like, nobody died, and I will now use that. I will use that term. And at the end of
I
the
love that
day,
you pulled that
people
back in.
matter. Like within the
Yeah.
organization, it's you can have a scuffle, and then you just got to communicate as humans and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I'm going to try and wrap things up quick. I'm conscious of time, but I want to ask you about something that you're proud of. You mentioned you're proud of your team, but
Yeah.
what's the kind of motive win that you're proudest of, where you felt the partnership really delivered long-term value?
Any of these, and any I could say, because we've had a number of them over the years, right, where we've been running with a customer and really being a part of their team. One of our current wins is our friends at Capital Brands, which is the new NutriBullet, Magic Bullet. This is a business
Hmm.
unit of DeLonghi. And I think we're going on maybe 9 years, 10 years of that relationship. And it's been fantastic. It's been, a wonderful collaboration, where you're really running and gunning with your customer,
Hmm.
and sort of solving things and very quickly seeing the product launch. And I mean, you essentially are operating as one business, but you're a unit within that business. And we really enjoy those kind of relationships because again, now you can interact. It's like when you go to
Hmm.
the doctor for the first time, it's like, what's wrong? I don't know. Let me hang out with you for a little while. But once you've been to that doctor for 5 years, like
Yeah.
there's a rhythm, that you can get a basic understanding. And I think that's really a massive benefit in our space. You need to be kept hungry as a consultant because there's a massive benefit
Mm.
in that. But then you also need to be kept close as a partner. And I think those businesses that operate in that manner, where they see the value and you can build a bridge, and we've had many. I mean, another one for many years
Mm.
was Keurig. Keurig, we had a fantastic run with Keurig for, I think, probably 15 or 17 of their most critical years as an early
Wow.
stage to a business of scale. And it was an absolutely fantastic run, amazing people, amazing creativity that happened. And
Hmm.
iRobot was another one. Really sad to see that they're filing for bankruptcy. And that was a
Yeah.
wonderful run that we had together for probably more than 10 years. Very, very proud of those relationships that we built long term, where we partner with the company and they've
Mm.
seen success and we've seen success. Um, and that those are the kinds of relationships that we look forward to, that you can help build a company and you can reflect on it later and go, wow, that was really pretty amazing. And that's the stock that I hope to be able to reap maybe in the last section of my career or my life, where I can spend time with wonderful people that I've worked with and really share that wisdom with another generation as they're coming on, like, hey, may not be identical, but there are certain things here that worked, and let me
Mm.
share that.
Yeah, it's amazing when you think about the impact you've had and the relationships you've built up over the years, where you know they're not just looking at you as a supplier.
That's right.
They want to speak to you because you're a good human being.
A
You're a
trusted
friend
partner,
as well.
like
Yeah,
it's like
absolutely.
you really become part of the family, and for that period of time, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And these things come and go, and you can mourn their loss for a very short period of time and then move on to the next thing. It doesn't mean that it wasn't impactful or meaningful, but it means that you need to replace that both financially and mentally, with something else. And everybody moves on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, we're going to wrap up quick shortly, but I want to look ahead now to the next 12 months. So, thinking about 2026, the next 12 months, Paul, what are you most excited about, both personally
Yeah.
and professionally?
Okay, I guess I'll unpack a couple of things. One, I mean, we went through a real big challenge here in the States with the latest regime. A lot of things that were unstable, or seen as unstable for business, that posed a lot of challenges, especially in our space, especially in the consumer
Mm.
retail. Where we're working closely with our partners over in Asia. So that made things really, really difficult. So not that all that stuff is resolved, but I think it is in a better place for 2026, where
Hmm.
there's a greater understanding around it. So I think that provides some foundational confidence of a way
Yeah,
forward. Again, I hope I'm not completely wrong on that one, but it feels that
me too.
again we've
It does
we've
feel that way, though, doesn't it?
yeah, we've beaten this thing up a bit. So I think there's that. So I think from the on the personal side, I've been sort of reflective on strategies that we'll take that may be a bit fresher, a bit different in terms of how we organize our team and
Hmm.
how we present ourselves. So I think that's always a healthy thing to sort of look at how you approach things and mix it up a little
Hmm.
bit. I I mean, personally, I feel like I'm in a good space. I'm starting to approach 60 years old and sort of thinking about the next phases there. And I think taking a more of a measured look at things long term. And so, really thinking strongly about how we move our business into the next
Hmm.
5 years. And putting some more attention into that as well. But it's been very difficult for 2025 because the house was on fire, right? I use
Yeah.
that in a little bit over dramatized term. I mean, we're fortunate to have the business that we had, and we've done fine. but I could see better potential, and with that potential, I'd like to spend some more effort working on the business and its growth potential to get through some of this challenge.
It's certainly an exciting 12 months ahead. I think if you think
so.
about, hopefully things will ease up, like I say, a bit more certainty around, what the tariffs landscape looks like as one thing, but then, with the advancements in AI and
That's
the
right.
technology, it's
Massive.
like, how can that positively impact our business and our customers and, and level us up? I'm certainly doing a lot of thinking around that
Yeah, you can't
for
have a
my business as
podcast
well.
without bringing up AI, especially
Well,
now.
no, that's it. So tick, done.
And I mean, I feel fortunate. Members of our team have taken on the responsibility of just being more proactive, of following it. And
Yeah.
boy, it changes so often. I mean, it reminds me of the .com days. And there's you just have to be mindful of the tools that are out there and testing and trying, and you have to be also mindful of not being just chasing shiny objects. I mean, there's still a core business. Our business model is not one that is based on a trend. Our business model's been around for many, many years in terms of so really just being mindful of just knowledgeable about the tools is key, but it's not necessarily changing it in its entirety.
No, it's got to bring it back to what are the core things that you're delivering.
That's right.
And it's communication,
Right.
It's problem solving, it's people.
That's right.
It's the same with my business. I'm leveling up with AI. It's helped me produce the notes for our call here.
Love that.
And it's integrated into my business.
Yeah.
But all it does is enable me to have more conversations like this.
That's right.
And that's the
hugely appreciate that.
So I'm going to ask you just some quick fire questions. Say the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah.
So fastest way to lose client trust is?
Poor ethics.
Cool. Well, not cool, but yeah, good answer. One thing you always look for in a client relationship? I could say the same thing.
Energy.
Energy. Cool. A packaging detail most people don't notice, but you obsess over?
Closures.
A skill young designers undervalue?
Conversation.
A belief about innovation you've changed your mind on?
Increments. Rather than wholesale, increments are important.
Cool. A product or pack you think is quietly world class?
There's so many today. I mean, the landscape of packages and product. It's hard for me to pick a brand right now. It's like picking a child. I've got 3 wonderful children. I don't pick favorites.
Yeah. Hundreds of favorite products as well. So. The final question: your default move when a project starts to wobble?
Get involved and communicate.
Awesome. I love those. Really good answers. So, Paul, thank you so much for spending the time with me. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I'm confident our listeners will as well. The final thing, just as a parting kind of message, if a brand is listening to this, thinking we need that kind of partner, what's the best first conversation to have with you?
Drop a note. Let's set up a Zoom and have an initial discussion, and then sit down for coffee in Boston or some other location, and let's learn, let's interact, and let's discuss.
Awesome. And if people want to reach out, is LinkedIn the best way? Are you more of an email guy, a phone guy?
Both. LinkedIn's fine, or
Both.
Paul at the-motiv.com is the way you can find me. But go to our website, and you can go to motivdesign.com and or the-motive.com, and you can find us there too.
Well, I'll include all that in the show notes.
Thank you.
Paul, thank you so much for spending the time with me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Chris, I would agree. I'm glad we had an opportunity to do this and have this conversation, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Likewise.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Why Design. If this episode gave you some new ideas, share it with someone in your team who'd find it useful. And follow the show so you don't miss what's next. And if you're building a product team or looking for your next challenge in design or engineering, that's exactly what we do at Kodu. We help companies hire smarter and faster and help great talent find work that actually fits. I'm Chris Whyte. Connect with me on LinkedIn and let's keep raising the bar for design leadership. Until next time, stay curious, stay creative, and keep asking, why design?